Good morning and welcome again, everyone. So as John mentioned, I'm just going to take us through kind of the high-level learning outcomes that we tried to put together for the first couple of modules in this program. This first module, Reimagining Retail E-commerce, it acts as an introduction to headless commerce and is really designed to take you through the process of reimagining how you can deliver retail commerce experiences which are relevant to your customers whilst also taking advantage of more modern digital technologies. All of this with a view really to gaining an advantage over your competitors. The world was changing even before the coronavirus pandemic. As recently as February this year, when we ran our digital impact event in London, we highlighted the importance of customer experience and how the digital retail space already fundamentally changed, with people putting much more emphasis on differentiating themselves with the experience that they offer their customers. The lockdowns that we're currently going through at the moment has really just accelerated that process, with everybody really defaulting to digital channels now out of necessity. It's no longer possible to engage with the brands and the organisations that we used to in the more traditional ways. For some brands, the strategic digital plans and investments they would have made before lockdown have probably paid off, and they would have had a seamless transition into a digital-first relationship with their customers. Whilst for others, this pandemic may have amplified the experience weaknesses in their digital channels, potentially encouraging users and customers who are usually loyal to their brand to explore other brands due to frustrations with the experience that they were having online. And at this stage, we'd just like to understand from you guys really just how has your digital platforms coped with the additional demand that might have arrived through this COVID-19 lockdown. I'm just going to launch our first poll of the day here with that very question. So let me just pop that up. Hopefully you guys can see that. We've got kind of 4 questions on there, ranging from the fact that maybe you coped very well through to actually quite poorly and your platform really creaked and suffered under the additional demand. We'll just give you guys just a few more seconds just to complete some of these answers, and then we'll close the poll down and show the results. Okay, just give you 10 more seconds on that. Okay, I'm just going to close that now, and we'll pop the results up on screen for everyone to see. Okay, that's quite interesting. Some of you already had platforms that could cope with the extra demand, but the majority there seems to be in a position where your platform managed, but perhaps some of the weaknesses are coming to the surface, and it's probably a situation where you probably can take the demand much further because you're at the seams. So that kind of ties in. Let me just pop back to here. That ties in with kind of the feedback that we've been having over the last few months. We have we met with a number of multi-channel brands who have been having to rely 100% on their e-commerce channel throughout this lockdown. And actually, for some, that uplift in digital commerce has been a real lifeline for them, whilst for others, it's amplified weaknesses in their current platforms, as we've seen from our poll there, and has left them unable to meet the demands of their customers' expectations. And for many, this unprecedented uplift in digital has also delivered some harsh reality checks. For many, it clearly demonstrates that the current approach to their digital retail commerce platform needs to evolve in order to meet with changing expectations of customers, as well as the ongoing strategic goals of the organisation. So really, if your platform can't cope with the demands it's under now in COVID-19, it's really becoming critical that your leadership within the organisation makes digital a strategic priority, because who knows where things are going to end up in 3, 6 or 12 months. Most of the people we're talking to at the moment are not expecting a full kind of reset to the status quo of how people were engaging with them pre-lockdown. They're expecting to see this uplift in digital engagement to continue long beyond lockdown. So there we go. Module 1 is really intended to help you begin that process of thinking strategically about your commerce platform, and how you can use a more modern approach to digital commerce to really differentiate the experiences you want to offer your customers. So think about what benefits and experiences are your customers seeking, what market opportunities exist for you, and do you have this data to get this insight? If not, how do you go about finding out the answers to those questions? You'll also need to understand or perhaps redefine your brand or organizational strategy and objectives, along with understanding your internal capabilities. Are you ready for a big transformation project at this stage? What skills do you need to reinforce your team with to be able to do that? And once you understand all of these components, the task is then to draw all of this together to come up with some kind of plan or digital strategy that will support your overarching organizational objectives. And of course, underpinning this strategy really must be how you innovate and differentiate your brand. And then we summarize with the final step of the reimagining process being to actually build an action plan. How are you realistically going to bring this strategy to life? And that's really what Module 1's white paper will provide you with, a clear framework for getting started with this reimagining process. So in summary, what you need to do is start with information, build a strategy that includes objectives and a plan that you actually implement. It's no good having a strategy for a replatforming exercise if you leave that strategy on the shelf and divert your focus elsewhere. And remember, when planning to implement your strategy, you don't have to change everything all at once. It's reasonable and good sometimes to start small, prove value with something small, and then at the same time as proving that value, you'll be able to foster support from your wider business team with regards to delivering the overall strategy that you're planning. Just a little example here, one of our clients recently came to us with a legacy platform that had some particular issues around checkout conversion rates. We helped them to understand that they didn't have to replace their entire platform in one go just to address the customer pain points in checkout. Working together, we implemented a new payment solution, and we implemented that alongside their existing platform. This helped to normalize their conversion rate, but also gave their digital team some kudos with the board. And that's just a really good example of how choosing something small but impactful will really help you prove that your strategy can be successful and is worth continuing with to the next stage. Starting small also means that you can trial innovation whilst managing risk. If that first trial works, build a second. If it didn't work out so well, learn from it and plan your next step. You'll also find that your internal stakeholders, particularly decision makers, will begin to gain confidence in your strategy when they start seeing these small proof points coming along more frequently. Okay, that's Module 1. Moving on to just summarising Module 2. This really builds on the fact that you've already created a strategy and trialed some innovation and proved that the process works. Now you need to start thinking about the bigger picture. Our Module 2 white paper, entitled Replatforming, explains that replatforming is often a necessary step and is the process you go through when you're researching and selecting a new mix of digital technology that is aligned to your strategic goals. It is a major step though, and does require some careful consideration and planning, but it will become the beating heart of your future-proof digital transformation strategy. This is because it's going to be the one thing that will probably act to enable all of those essential experience improvements that you're looking to achieve, and also to realise the objectives of your strategy. Replatforming is therefore a critical dependency for success, and is often the first place where you'll need to start researching once you've got your action plan in place. But making a replatform decision should not really be the responsibility of a single individual within your organisation. And we outline here in this white paper that because it's such a strategic component, you need to build a team from across all areas of your organisation into a selection panel, with each member of that panel being tasked with evaluating the features and benefits and value of a platform, using their understanding and their knowledge from their parts of the business. And remember, you should continue to reference customer insight all through the replatforming process, so that you're not just making decisions based purely upon business requirements. It's important to keep those customer needs at the heart of the decisions that you're taking, and making sure that the choices that you make today are still going to be suitable for your customers in 3-6 months' time and beyond. And it's not unusual at this stage of the process to be shortlisting platforms from a variety of different architecture approaches. The most common of those available to you will be monolithic, best of breed, and microservices. Just very briefly, the key differences there on this spectrum. A monolithic platform is a piece of technology where all capabilities are provided in one suite. It's quite often a hefty piece of software and takes quite a bit of familiarization with to be able to get the best out of. Right through to the other end of the spectrum where you have a microservices approach where you're actually selecting smaller component pieces of technology and bridging them all together through a central API layer. And all of these microservices can communicate and talk and move information around in a very efficient way. And this enables you to only bring on board the pieces of technology that you need at the time when you need them, rather than having to commission everything all at once up front. It's often quite hard to determine the right architectural approach without seeking external expertise, though. This is because the vendor market within each of these approaches is really highly competitive, and some of these approaches are fairly modern concepts that may not even be familiar to those within your IT department. And that's why we always advise clients, whichever approach they think they may prefer, to undertake an early proof of concept or pilot with a number of options. You could even pilot different architecture approaches. This would really help you de-risk your platform selection process and give you some greater comfort that everything that you've been promised by the vendor pre-sales team is genuinely a production-ready capability of the platform that you're shortlisting. This piloting process alone could potentially save hundreds of thousands of pounds in implementation costs in the long run. And one final point on this, a pilot should never really be thought of as something that's a disposable activity. Whenever we undertake pilots, we make sure that we deliver them in such a way that the DNA of a pilot can be transitioned into a final project, thus speeding up and saving time and money on actual delivery. So just wrapping up on some key lessons here. Once you've settled on your architectural approach, you're also going to need to consider how are you actually going to deliver the program. Your most common options here for a delivery strategy will be agile or waterfall. We happen to find that the nature of the more modern headless architecture does suit agile delivery, but this alone is not a reason to adopt agile. You would have to make sure that everyone across your organization is fully ready to shift to an agile mindset if you haven't already. But that really isn't a topic for today. That's probably a webinar in its own right, and we won't be covering much more on that. But you have two choices, waterfall or agile, predominantly speaking, with replatforming projects. And then the final phase of replatforming is actually executing the migration itself. Here again, you have a few choices of approaches. You can take a big bang implementation approach where you deliver everything in one go at the end of a program. You could drip things in by channel, or you could do a more gradual implementation, replacing one part of your existing stack at a time. Your migration approach will depend upon both the architecture and delivery approaches that you as a team have settled on. So for instance, modern headless technologies, as we've already said, lend themselves really well to a gradual implementation using agile as a framework. And businesses that do that often enjoy frequent value being dropped into the business from that investment. Monolithic technologies, however, due to their very nature, are harder to deliver gradually, and more often than not, we see those being delivered in a much more kind of big bang waterfall approach, with that value only being returned at the end of a project. So that in essence wraps up our module 2. If you follow that process across those 2 modules, you should now be prepared with your strategic plan for reimagining your strategy, a replatforming project team to help you make the right choices and to deliver success of the overall program, an architectural approach, whether you want to go headless, best of breed, or monolithic, a delivery methodology, that being agile or waterfall, and your preferred migration approach, big bang or gradual. So just to remind you of the benefits of each of these modules here, each white paper and the module landing pages on our website do include some key learning outcomes and some questions you can ask the business. Do use these as they're quite a handy guide and can help you progress through this program that we've put together. If you have any questions, you can save them up for our summit in October, or you can ask them as we go through these webinar sessions, and questions for this session will be opened up shortly. We have a few people on board today, so if we don't get to your questions during the actual webinar, we'll follow up with you independently outside of these sessions. Okay, hopefully we can now pass over to Nareed, who's, I understand his microphone is now working. We can hear him. So Nareed, do you want to introduce yourself and talk the guys through the case study that you were going to share with us today?
Can you hear me, Tim?
I can. Let me just pass over to you now.
Brilliant, thank you.
There we go. You should have control.
Great, and you should see my screen as well.
Yes, we've got that.
Brilliant, good. So again, apologies, they've had some technical issues, but I'm Nirav Shah, VP of EMEA for Commerce Tools. My history and background is about 20 to 22 years in building and running enterprise software companies, both on-premise and software as a service and cloud native. I'm really pleased to be here with you this morning. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Cimpress and what they've been doing with e-commerce. I think it's really powerful and interesting story that will resonate, especially in the current times. So who are Cimpress? So Cimpress is a 25-year-old global company that makes customized print, signage, apparel, gifts, and identity merchandise. And they've grown significantly, both organically and through acquisition of major businesses in each major market that they operate in. They have about 15 brands, including Tradeprint here in the UK, National Pen, and the most widely known Vistaprint. And over the last 3 years, specifically, their growth has been exponential, and it's been driven by their technology division building out a capability called a mass customization platform, MCP. That at the heart of it is an e-commerce engine that's powered by Commerce Tools. Now let's talk about specifically what they did just a couple of months ago, specifically within Vistaprint. So one of their brands, Vistaprint, wanted to launch a new masks product line and have their sales and marketing organization run campaigns around it during the current COVID pandemic. Given the uncertainty of the current times, they needed to go fast and test in a small market, as Tim outlined in his section. That starting small is a key best practice. So they started small in a specific market and then scaled globally, all within a matter of 3 to 4 weeks. So what did they exactly do? So if we look at their timeline, on April 7th, early April, they started from inception and to supply chains to launch their marketing campaigns. Vistaprint were able to start generating revenue within 1 calendar month and launch globally later on. And that's a great testament of sales, marketing, and IT working together based on this mass customization platform that's been developed by Cimpress's technology division. Suffice to say that the MCP, being API-led and built on headless technologies, allowed them to do that in a very fast and agile manner, certainly agile being a key methodology akin to rolling out headless technologies. And they certainly would never have been able to execute at this speed and scale with a cumbersome monolithic platform. And so, if you look at the timeline, sort of between April 7th and April 24th, they tested the capability, launched a marketing campaign in one country, and then after the 24th, between the 24th of April and the 3rd of May, they started to roll out to European markets, and now it's pretty much a global campaign. And what it's generating from a top line perspective is real top line revenue, launched from a new product line to date. Here's a brief quote from James Hart, who is Vistaprint's e-commerce principal software engineer. And I'll let you read that, but I think the last line says it all. Yes, we can handle it. As opposed to in the old world, getting a response when you're trying to pivot to a new business model or adopt new product lines. Saying that it'll take 9 months to build and 3 months to launch. So it's very, very rapid, agile, and immediate, driving significant value. Okay, So at this point, I'll hand back over to Tim, who can guide us through some of the questions.
Hi there, everybody. My name's Mike Dogweiler. I'm the moderator for the questions and the discussions. I'm a member of the Profound team. So welcome to the webinar. And we've had some. We've got two lots of questions for today. We've had those that you've submitted in advance, and we've got 6 really good ones that we pulled out. And then some of you have been asking questions during the course of the presentation. The questions are open if you want to submit further questions, and then we'll answer those during the discussion. So thanks, Tim, for putting those up on the screen. Starting off with the first one. This looks like one for you, Nirav. What are the benefits of using best of breed solutions versus monolithic suites?
Yeah, really good question. I think Tim covered some of the aspects of what both these methodologies contain from a technology perspective. But I think if we look at monolithic suites, certainly, some of the more common ones are at least 20 years old, if not more. They're hard to maintain, as it requires additional developers to maintain it, certainly the larger the suite gets. They're hard to change, certainly, so every change requires you to retest the entire application, which leads to slow release cycles. And then certainly not built on agile methodologies and not built for today. So if you look at how Cimpress rapidly took the current situation and found an opportunity to launch a new product line, certainly that would have been quite difficult to do with a monolithic suite. So conversely, best-of-breed solutions are based on sort of or MAC principles, so microservices, APIs, cloud, and headless. Sort of these are the key ingredients that make up best-of-breed solutions. And now, if we sort of talk about each one of those, I mean, microservices allows you to consume the entire platform or parts of it based on specific use cases, and allows you to start small and deploy in any digital channel. API-led means that the platform can be consumed on any device, whether it's a front end or other application. It's born in the cloud, so it's extremely fast and easy to deploy. So we have we've seen 100 millisecond response times in terms of how quick they are in terms of responsiveness, and they're multi-cloud. So we can host these platforms in Google, Azure, AWS, in your own private cloud as well. And they scale infinitely. So as we've seen from the recent pandemic, and even going forward, especially retail organizations need to adjust their platforms to be able to scale for these high spikes, especially when you run just-in-time campaigns and for seasonal events like Black Friday. And headless means that you can easily separate or decouple the front end from the back end, which thereby improves the customer experience and also time to value. So you're not always changing things both in the front end, back end, and somewhere else, but you can really decouple that and drive significant value.
Okay, that's great. Thank you for that. We've got, this is a really good one. So, and I think this is probably one for you, Tim, actually, number 2. In reality, how much faster can you deliver value with a headless approach versus a monolithic approach? I guess that's a question that really underpins which solution you should choose.
Yeah, I mean, from our experience, we've never really seen an enterprise scale monolithic transformation go from discovery to launch much faster than 12 months. And typically speaking, we would have experienced lead times about 18 months on getting a monolithic enterprise project live. Converse to that, we've just started actually a new headless project with a client. We're about 2 months into development, and we've already completed 2 significant releases to live. The project itself is only 6 months old, and we're already working on release 3. So, we normally see headless projects delivering value at least kind of 50% faster than what you would expect to see on an equivalent monolithic program.
Okay, great. Would you mind advancing by a slide for me, please, Tim?
I think there's one question missing on that slide, Mike.
Oh, my apologies. Yes, you're absolutely right. Final question on that slide then, and let's have a look. Yeah, this could be another one for you, Tim, actually, and don't feel left out, John, but we'll come on to you later. Tim, how digitally mature does an organization need to be to consider adopting a microservices architecture? Might be worth, again, just recapping what you were saying earlier about the different types of architectures, and then maybe expanding a bit on what is a microservices architecture, because we have a question coming up that's related to that for the discussion, because I think we have a few marketers in the audience who are maybe a little less technical.
Sure. Okay, so microservices is also known as kind of a headless approach, and it's just basically the concept that you're just taking individual packages of technology. So it could be a CMS, it could be an e-commerce website, it could be a CRM, and you're bridging them all together using a common kind of gateway so they can all talk and move data between themselves really efficiently. And the integration between those systems is made really simple because all of those disparate systems have been built on an API first basis, which means that they're open to be connected. There's no kind of customization needed in order to connect those systems together. And when we refer to kind of microservices, it's because each one of those pieces of software are considered a microservice in the overall picture. Conversely, a monolithic piece of technology would be one big slab of technology that tries to do all of those features and capabilities of those microservices components in one suite, but they can often be quite overwhelming and quite cumbersome to work with. So getting back to the question is a really good one, actually. So how digitally mature do you need to be to consider adopting microservices? I guess my opinion is that I don't really believe that digital maturity is that big a factor anymore with regards to needing to be more mature to adopt microservices. It used to be the case that you would have to put in some specialist skills and some specialist technology to be able to start building a microservice estate. But the way that these headless technologies evolved over the last few years, they've kind of helped overcome those problems and made microservices accessible to most organizations, regardless of their kind of digital maturity. But you do need to, however, understand that in order to get the best out of a microservice approach, your organization will need to adopt a bit of a different mindset and become comfortable with the principle of connecting a stack of solutions together rather than procuring one all-in-one suite. This does have some major advantages, though, because as I mentioned before, these all-in-one slabs can be really labor-intensive and hard to manage because you have to work in quite often unintuitive ways, in ways that are very specific to the platform. Whereas going headless, these have all been built with kind of customer experience in mind, and you can actually choose the right mix of components you need for the task in hand. You don't have to worry about all of the things in the suite that you're not using yet because you're not ready to adopt them. And we've actually worked with a load of clients in the past who have gone and purchased expensive monolithic technologies and never used more than 10% of them. And that's because their internal capabilities are never matured enough to be able to leverage the value of the whole suite of technology that's available to them. And unfortunately, that's meant that they're left paying heavy license fees for technology where they could actually have chosen a much more simple or basic approach to their challenge at the time. So, yeah, in summary, I think microservices can be for everybody. I think what's really important just understand the approach and what it actually means for you as an organisation when you're adopting it.
Okay, cool. Thank you for that. That's so. Our next question then is how to implement a modern API-led commerce platform, and I think this is definitely one for you, Nirav.
Sure, no problem. I mean, great question. I mean, there's typically three ways that we see in the market. You can either start small in a specific department or use case, or do a mass digital transformation initiative. I think, but the key is, as Tim has also outlined, is to start demonstrating value within weeks and months versus many man-months and years. Alternatively, you can work with experts like Profound, who will come in and quickly help define a strategy and executable plan with milestones that achieve immediate business value. or thirdly, sign up for a free trial and start building out your own use cases, which can be made production ready very, very easily. So those are sort of three approaches we see as best practices.
Okay, and again, for the benefit of some of our marketers out there, again, I'm seeing some questions come in about the kind of concepts behind APIs. I know we're going off piece slightly. Do you want to just expand a little bit about APIs? I know we're going to be coming onto those in a later module, but maybe Nirav, how do APIs actually tie this lot together, just in say 2 minutes?
Yeah, I mean APIs. I mean, you should just from a layman's perspective, just regard them as discrete packaged components that allow you to that perform some sort of function or action, and that could be as simple as add my order to a cart, process my payment, whatever it may be. So those are just examples of underneath those functions are APIs that are working extremely fast and in an agile manner, decoupled from any of your other systems to really drive that value. So it's just imagine them as discrete individual prepackaged components that can be used in any digital channel to perform a business function.
So are they kind of like an end in themselves, or do they act as the interface between all these different microservices?
They act as an interface between these various components, and they can be an endpoint as well. But more often than not, they're essentially sit in the middle, performing various interactions and business functions that knit an end-to-end customer journey or experience.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. So then the next question then, will my marketer still have a good authoring experience on the front end? I think that comes down to you again, Tim.
Yeah, this is a question we often encounter, particularly with organizations that have never encountered Headless previously, and they're a bit worried about what that authoring experience is like. Our opinion is, with regards to the authoring experience, you can have a good authoring experience or a bad authoring experience in both monolithic or headless technologies. It really does come down to how well your platform has been implemented. You can take decisions in the implementation process of a project with Headless that can actually really make the difference for the users of the system. And as I said, it doesn't really matter whether you're going monolithic or headless. It really does come down to how well the platform is built out as to how good the experience will be for the CMS and the commerce administrator users.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'm just looking at the clock, Tim, and I think that the final one on skill sets, that's a good one too. Do you want to just give us 2 minutes on that before we move on to the summary and then get on to the discussion, because we've got some more really good questions for the team to discuss.
No problem. I can give this from our perspective. When we shifted ourselves to be kind of headless first as our agency, it actually made it a lot easier for us to recruit skills to work on headless projects, because the very nature of headless technologies is there's a lot of emphasis on the front end, and the developers that possess those kind of rich front end skills are able to work on things which would be classed as traditionally front end only and back end only things in one role, which you can use JavaScript across the entire spectrum of development requirements there. So from our point of view, we've actually found consolidating to an approach like Headless has actually meant that it makes recruiting a lot easier. We don't have to go out looking for really specialist platform expertise with different flavors of either .NET or Java or PHP kind of back-end technology experience. We've been able to say, actually, our team is one skill set, it's JavaScript, and we go from front end to back end with that one common team and skill set.
Okay, thank you. So I think that's enough of the upfront questions we have. Tim's going to do us a quick summary of the program, and then we'll have 10 minutes of the formal period for discussion, and anyone who wants to continue, we can continue that process offline if you like. So thanks to all the panel for answering the questions, or this first set of questions, and back to you, Tim, for a brief summary.
Yeah, we'll keep this very brief. So what we've covered off so far, we've explained Module 1 has provided the context and how you define your strategy, and encourages you to how to take action. We then move on to understanding the different types of platforms and why you might need to change your platform in order to meet your strategic goals. And then we cover off how to create your replatforming strategy and who's going to take part in that selection panel or that replatforming team, so that you're confident you're making the right choices for your business and for your customers. And finally, we spent a bit of time today as well, and quite a bit of information in the white papers about different architectures and migration approaches that you have available to you, and the pros and cons of those are covered in more detail in the white papers and the content we have on our website. So yeah, that wraps up kind of modules 1 and 2 for the program. Our third module is actually going to be published on the 17th of June, and that one's going to actually go into much more detail about the actual process of platform migration. And then that's followed up with our 4th module on the 24th of June, which covers off the stages and the experience that you go through when you're converting from monolithic to microservices for the first time. And yeah, that's available 24th of June. And those two upcoming modules will be summarised in our next webinar on Wednesday, the 1st of July. Okay, Mike, I think this is back to you to help us with discussion time.
Sure. Okay, so we've had about, so far we had 4 questions come in from the audience, and thank you for those. And I have enabled the raise hands, but we'll work through these first 4 questions, and then if we've still got time, we can continue the discussion. Otherwise, like I say, what we can do is we can take you're always welcome to ask additional questions offline via the hello@profound.works address. Just one quick note about data and privacy. We're only identifying people by their first names who have asked the question, and because we are going to be publishing a recording of the webinar and sharing that with all of the students on the course. So the first question we had, and this was from James, and it was about your case study, Nirav, and it's can you please tell us the mass customization platform, was that a piece of Simpress developed tech, or is it made of other tech components?
Yeah, no, great question. So the mass customization is a proprietary name given by Simpress, and it's made up of 3 core headless technologies, which are commerce, search, and content management. And then it's around that they've developed their own APIs as well to facilitate the entire end-to-end journey. And then all of that mass customization platform from a deployment perspective is that each business unit or brand, like a Vistaprint, would engage with Simpress technology with a business requirement or business need, like in the case studies situation where they had a new product line to be launched, and using an architecture framework and a methodology based on Agile, Simpress technology would provide some expertise and best practices on how best to launch those new products and services. But it's made up of 3 core headless technologies: commerce, search, and content management, and some additional development that Simpress did on top of that.
Okay, just one quick question coming back to you mentioned it was an agile development. What led the team to focus on agile as opposed to waterfall?
Yeah, I think that. Yeah, I mean, certainly waterfall is serial in nature and requires much like a long novel, a beginning, middle, and an end, and you have to go that way. Versus with agile, you're iteratively developing, testing, and launching, and doing that, in almost 2 to 4 sprint cycles. And the decision to go down that route was, time to deployment and time to value. But underlying, obviously, as Tim outlined, it's very hard to do that with a monolithic platform. And so their technology decision or choice of going down the headless route married well with their deployment methodology.
Okay, so That's quite neat actually, because it links on to the next question we had. Raki has asked about proof of concepts, and which is timely because we've actually got a proof of concept blog coming out, so keep an eye out for that. And the question is, firstly, can you do a proof of concept? And secondly, what is the time and resource investment? And I guess this wasn't asked, but the logical thing is, when can you start looking at what the ROI is? Tim or John? Tim, is this for you?
Yeah, sure, I can take this one.
Okay.
Okay, so we actually find ourselves doing more and more proof of concepts these days as part of discovery. When we meet with clients for the first time, it's really hard for us to make any kind of commitment on what it's going to take to complete a piece of work until we actually become, sorry about that, till we become more familiar with the landscape that exists within an organisation. And sometimes there are some technologies that exist in the business that will need to be proved that they can connect and work with other technologies that need to be introduced. So, as I said, we're doing quite a few proof of concepts before we even get out of discovery. In regards to how long they should take, it depends on what you're trying to prove, really. They can be quite big things, but we'd like to try and make sure that proof of concepts are fairly self-contained, quick exercises, so that you're not investing lots of time and money on something. You have to be really specific about what you're trying to achieve and prove with that concept. And if you can't really determine whether or not something can be done in a short period of time, say no more than 20 days, then you're probably looking at a wider project. But normally we would find within 20 days you've normally got the answers to what you need to be able to give you more insight and more understanding of the things that you'll need to tackle as part of a bigger project. In terms of the resources required to do that, it depends whether you're going to do the proof of concept in-house and you have the availability of your technical teams to support you with that. How ready available are they? More common is that you might reach out to a partner that you're quite interested in working with and ask them to help you do a proof of concept. It's also a great way to test the mettle of a new partner and prove a good working relationship with a very relatively low risk. You'd only be engaging for probably a fixed price POC period of 1 to 4 weeks, and it helps both parties understand kind of the lay of the land, how you like to work, what kind of ceremonies happen, and things like that. So
I think overall as well for the client, it de-risks things going forward. The last thing anyone wants is to get a very nasty surprise 3 or 6 months into a project if they've done a lot of that proof of concept up front. And sometimes it could be, just doing a very simple, integration proof of concept or testing the, the performance and speed under stress. It could be a whole host of things. But if those are carried out early in the process, it really does de-risk things. Also, we've just noticed as a general trend, there are more organisations who are actually rethinking, should we actually bother doing a full RFP process where we've got 500 questions in a spreadsheet with tick boxes and all this sort of process, where in fact you can dive straight in, quickly make assessments, quickly decide what's right and what's wrong, and move on to progress the project, and again without risk. So we find those things are quite appealing for clients, and it's certainly an approach that people are taking these days.
Okay, that's great. So I'm just conscious again, we've got a few minutes left. We've had 2 more questions in from Chris and from Nishit. Chris, Nishit, if you'd be patient with us just for a second. The first one, I think, Chris, I'm going to read this out. Given that the traditional platforms have predetermined experiences, how do you help the business teams to understand the difference between and focus on delivering a better user experience versus redesigning the wheel? So I guess the context there is you've got maybe a legacy monolith platform, and you're looking at creating that better user experience without replicating what you've already got. Now, in terms of user experiences, I guess this is again one for you, Tim.
Yeah, sure, I'll take that one. Okay, so I guess the first place to start is the customer experience or the user experience, and what do we actually want the future state customer experience to be, and how close is the current state to actually achieving that? And one of the great things about working with a headless approach is that you don't have to do, as we said before, we don't have to do big bang. So if we've got the data and the insight and the understanding of what the future state is to suggest that there is a part of our website or our shop online that isn't performing very well, we can actually just work on fixing that part of the customer journey without having to rip and replace the whole platform out in one go. And that's something that we've done quite successfully over the last couple of years on the projects we've worked on. We don't ever replace, from the projects we've worked on so far, we haven't ever replaced a website with a brand new website in one go. We start focusing on one part of the journey. It could be the experience, the product, it could be the experience through basket or checkout, it could be the My Account experience. We start working on the areas which have the most pain, where the most value we deliver if they're fixed first, and then we develop and build in such a way that those user experiences can be spliced into the current platform and the current experience with little or no jarring experience for the customer. And then you can think of it then that we actually eat the website inside out. We start replacing bit by bit, and over 3, 6, 9, 12 months, we've actually built a whole platform without the customer really noticing that the whole thing has changed in one go. It's a very gradual and gentle, incremental improvement. And the great thing about doing it that way is that you can test those user experience improvements as you go. So every time you drop in a new sub-journey or a new improvement to one part of the website, get that straight into user testing and prove that actually the data was right up front and you have made the right choices and the right changes. If you haven't, you've got the flexibility to carry on tweaking until you see the improvements you're looking for.
One thing I'd add to that is it kind of points to the obvious, but you do need to invest, perhaps in the discovery phase, in the customer insight and research side of the project. We often find that organizations have some level of customer insight lying around. Maybe they've got some persona insights, or they've tracked a few journeys. But what you really want to get to is the why behind things, not just the what. So, what is the intent that any user is showing at any point in time? What behaviours do we want to remotivate in a different way to make sure they take action? And so having that well-researched insight at the outset really properly informs the rest of the way, the technical delivery, if you like, is delivered. So just a small point, but don't forget to invest in that CX insight and research to get it right, because at the end of the day, if you're delivering something that is not appealing or functionally difficult to work with, it doesn't matter how fast or great the technology is, you've got to have that UX piece right and have that CX investment to inform the UX in the right way.
Okay, thank you. Again, conscious of time, we've got one final one for Nirav, and this is from Nishit. With all the existing monolith commerce providers moving to cloud-based solutions, how do you evaluate these platforms in terms of maturity with respect to Mac feature, microservice, API, cloud, headless? So Nirav, 2 minutes on that one.
Brilliant. No, great question. So I think a lot of these monolith platforms who are trying to become headless, you have to really qualify: are they really headless or API led, and what are the foundations of their platforms? So as an example, if you look at APIs, a lot of these monolith platforms, as they move towards cloud, only have partial coverage of what you're trying to do. So 20 to 30% coverage from an API and microservices perspective. Secondly, are they really cloud, or are they just hosted and then sold and respun as cloud platforms? So there you're incurring hosting costs, software costs, support costs, so a traditional way of procuring software, and thereby your overall TCO, or total cost of ownership, will just massively increase. And also when you go into a POC, challenge them to say, okay, show us how quickly can you deliver against these set of use cases, and there you'll really start to see some of these pretenders, I like to call them, fall by the wayside, because the underlying code that is within these monolith platforms that are trying to move towards headless is really still from the 1990s. I mean, we were working with one Canadian retailer who were trying to chop off the head off a monolith platform, so to speak, and those were their words. And it took them 7.5 months just to do that, and over $500,000 in professional services fees. And they still were not able to do that, at which point they came to headless providers. So just some examples. I think really test them on what do they really mean by moving to the cloud, headless, API, etc., and then challenge them to a POC in a few days or a week or so and see what they can deliver.
Okay, thank you. Following on from that, just one last one. Thanks, Nirav. And I think this is just a final one for Tim, and this is related to a couple of the questions that we've got, and it's related to if you've got an existing monolith legacy solution in place, can you start your headless replacement in parallel? I mean, is it a big bang, which I think has just been mentioned, or is it a slow extinction strategy?
You'd have to take each one on a case-by-case basis, but I'd be surprised if in most situations you can perform a slow extinction of a platform. But it does. There is one thing that can actually probably trip you up as a client of a monolithic platform. There are still in existence some monolithic platforms out there that are quite proprietary and not mainstream, and those platforms perhaps provided by your existing agency or a legacy agency. And if you do want to do a slow extinction of a monolithic platform, you will need the cooperation of that agency in that situation, because you're going to actually be needing to impact the code base of the current website, the current monolithic, and inject into the environments the new headless code as well. Even though the headless code will be decoupled from everything in the mix there, it still needs to be spliced together on the front end in some way. So you will need the cooperation of the existing agency if that is the situation that you're in. And we have seen some examples where agencies who have built business models around monolithic services, particularly support and things like that, are reluctant to cooperate in those situations. So some initial kind of pilots and discovering and investigations will help identify what the real kind of opportunity is to do a slow extinction over Big Bang, because slow extinction is always preferable. It's far less risky, and you get to prove things a lot faster and deliver value faster.
So there's a kind of a delicate balancing act at times, not just between the technologies, but also between the different stakeholder groups involved.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, that's interesting, because I think one of the highlights of Module 2, replatforming, there's a real emphasis there on making sure you select the right team. And I guess that's not just the right team internally, but it's also the right team of external partners, agencies, and vendors. Okay.
Yes.
So, well, thank you everybody for your questions. It's been a really interesting session. Again, I'm conscious of the time. We've run over a little bit. Just in terms of what happens next, Tim's already done a summary of the key learning points of the modules, so we won't spend any more time. What we will do is you'll get a follow-up email tomorrow from GoToWebinar that will provide you with a link to the recording of today's webinar. Can I urge you to go back to the program landing page on the Profound website and take a look at the modules. And Module 3 is going to be available next week. Also, keep an eye out for the blogs and the other learning materials that we're publishing in association. I think we've got a really good one coming out, possibly Friday, on proof of concepts. So it just remains for me to say thank you for everyone's participation. Look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks' time at the next webinar. If anyone wants to continue the dialogue offline, please use the hello@profound.works address, and we'll get right back to you. So any final closing words, JP or Tim?
No, just like to thank everybody for their time, and hopefully it's been a useful webinar. And as mentioned, there'll be a couple of more webinars coming up in 1st of July and the 29th of July.
Yeah. And we're open to feedback as well. We might send out some requests for feedback on how you found the session to help us shape the future ones to your needs a bit better, if required.
Lovely. Thank you, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye now.
Thank you all.
Thanks. Bye-bye.